If you want to defeat the first boss in the new Hive of Gorgons 10-man raid, then this video is for you. There's a total of 3 different bosses in this new Hive of Gorgons raid. However, in today's video, I am focused 100% on this very first boss to help you guys understand what you have to do to take him down. This whole video is going to be highlighting different tips and tricks on different things you have to keep in mind in order to come across this victory screen that we see right here and taking down the very first boss here and picking up some very easy weekly rewards. So let's go ahead and jump right in. First things first, let's talk about your consumables. So of course you want a handful of infused health and regeneration potions, but along with those, I like to also bring regeneration serums just in case you need it and just in case you find yourself in low health. Other than that, I do prefer bringing some Oak Flesh Balm for this first boss because it does deal some physical damage, but if you really wanted to, you could also bring a handful of this Gemstone Dust for the first and also the rest of the bosses. Other than that, we do have a handful of consumables we need to bring, including a powerful Honing Stone, which right away, that is a 7% boost in your weapon damage. Yes, it counts towards your Empower cap, but regardless, it's definitely worth making sure you have enough of those to keep you going for the entire fight. Also, this first boss, along with the other bosses, are considered Angry Earth. So it's very important to bring multiple infused Angry Earth coatings. And again, you need one for each weapon at all times, as well as a infused Angry Earth Ward potion. These both will not only allow you to dish off more damage, but also survive some massive hits from these guys. Other than that, I do want to call out that it is also very, very important to bring your attribute food, even if you think you're okay, whether it's con, dexterity, intelligence, or anything else, make sure you bring it because those extra attribute points will definitely make this fight a whole lot easier. When talking about your equipment, I do want to call out a few things too. First things first, Strike Ward gems are very helpful on this first boss. It does deal a lot of strike damage. It doesn't hurt to also pick up some refreshing as a DPS just to make sure you're dishing off abilities as fast as possible. Next up, make sure that your artifacts are as upgraded as possible that you plan on using. I prefer using the Tumbler Feet Wraps, and then I also like to kind of sprinkle in the finisher here and there in regards to just dishing off tons and tons of damage. But again, it's up to you and your preferred weapon. If you do want to be most effective though, it's very, very important that you bring a ranged weapon in this fight. I like to play around with the Bolt Caster, but honestly, it seems like the most effective DPS players tend to use either the Deep Freeze Ice Gauntlet artifact or a Fire Staff because fire does deal a increased amount of damage to Angry Earth. When we start talking about the heart runes, it's actually pretty interesting because you can use the Cannon Blast heart rune from the pillars, allowing you to dish off tons of damage as fast as possible. Or, of course, you can use Detonate once you actually exhaust the boss, just to dish off tons of burst damage and deal as much damage as possible. The last thing I want to call out before we get into some mechanics and more tips and tricks is that you should have 3 major Angry Earth combat trophies. Again, these are Angry Earth bosses, so 15% extra damage is definitely a huge positive. Now let's get on to the fun stuff. It's very important as a DPS user to stay aware of the ground because it will start to glow. When you see it glow, you want to stand in the middle of the glowing circle, allowing you to get on top of these pillars. While you're on a pillar, you can increase your overall damage, as well as prevent any boulders being shot out at you. The only thing you have to watch out for is when he charges at you, just like you saw on the screen there, as well as when he shoots out these different spikes. When he shoots out the spikes, you want to jump off of the pillar as fast as possible, because if they hit you, it will instantly kill you. And since we're talking about pillars, it's important to note that these will deal damage when you're underneath them to get on top, and as you can tell, it won't be pretty if you are low health. Plus, if they start glowing like that, make sure you jump off as soon as possible because they will instantly kill you. Another tip worth mentioning is the fact that your goal as a DPS is to deplete that stamina bar as much as possible. Once that yellow stamina bar hits 0, he will actually hit the ground and be exhausted and open himself up to be extremely vulnerable. This is your cue to just dish off your heart rune, all of your rends, and deal as much damage as possible, and position yourself towards the back of his spine because that is where he will actually be most vulnerable and take the most damage. Other than that, the only other most important mechanic for you to understand is that when these obsidian crystals hit the battlefield, you have to stop what you're doing and just destroy them as quickly as possible with all of your fellow DPS users. Again, if you do not destroy these in time, it will just end up wiping your team based off of the AoE damage they unleash, and it is just not worth it. So again, once you see those crystals, stop what you're doing and destroy them as fast as possible. Now, I primarily focused on the overall mechanics and tips for DPS users, just because it's a little bit more straightforward if you are tanking or if you are a healer. If you are a tank, your primary goal is to hold the aggro of this boss as much as possible and prevent your DPS friends to actually take any damage. If you are a healer, typically you have one of two jobs because most of these groups have two healers on the team. One of the healer's primary jobs will be to make sure the tank stays alive. If the tank somehow ends up dying, chances are pretty high that your team will wipe unless they are just really, really good at kiting this thing. The other goal of the other healer is to ensure that your DPS users are not only staying alive and healed, but also that they are empowered as much as possible, utilizing the Void Gauntlet. So again, it's very useful for the secondary weapons of healers to be Void Gauntlets, just to make sure that your DPS users are empowered as much as possible to dish off all the damage that they possibly can do. With these tips and tricks, you should have everything you need in order to take down this first raid boss in the Hive of Gorgons raid. Again, there is no major DPS check here other than taking down those obsidian crystals, so you can be a little bit more lenient and just have a little bit of a cushion if you really need it for your constitution, but I do recommend running as low con as possible once you get a hang of this. And that covers it. That is essentially the simple guide to take down this first raid boss. Let me know in the comments if you have other strategies like using ice pylons or other weapons and abilities to take this guy down quickly. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button and consider subscribing for more New World content. Also, if you like this video format, let me know in the comments below, and I can do a video just like this for the second and third raid boss as well, to make sure you know exactly what you have to know in order to take these guys down and pick up your weekly rewards. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.